If we asked you to name the most underwhelming crypto of this cycle, chances are many of you would say Ethereum. And ETH's price has struggled, and sentiment around Ethereum has been nothing short of abysmal. As a result, many ETH holders are desperately hoping for a catalyst to revive their portfolios. And if that's you, then good news. Etherealize, an institutional marketing firm dedicated to pitching Ethereum to Wall Street, might just be that catalyst. As institutions dip their toes into crypto, the big question now is, can Etherealize convince them to take the plunge? My name is Nick. Stay tuned. Now, if you've been paying attention to the crypto market of late, you'll have undoubtedly noticed ETH's price action, or should I say, a lack thereof. While other large-cap cryptos like Bitcoin's BTC and Solana's Sol have rallied to new all-time highs, Ethereum's ETH has been left in the dust.
Tell me why!
And there are several reasons for this underperformance, but the most obvious of which is Ethereum's user experience. Transacting on Ethereum is like riding in a limousine, prestigious and packed with high-end features, but struggling with heavy traffic and charging a hefty premium for the ride. In other words, Ethereum is slow and expensive, making it impractical for the average user. To combat this, Ethereum has a whole bunch of layer 2s to help with this scalability, and these L2s use various methods like optimistic rollups or zero-knowledge proofs. But this presents another problem. Ethereum has become much more complex, and this added complexity creates an entry barrier for new users. And this relates to another one of Ethereum's challenges, which has been, well, competition, namely from alternative layer 1s like Solana. In contrast to Ethereum's low speeds, high transaction fees, and complexity, Solana has stolen the show by being much faster, cheaper, and easier to use. Not only has this attracted new users, but it's also siphoned off new developer talent. Case in point. Last year, Solana attracted more new developers than Ethereum for the first time ever, although we should note that Ethereum still has more developers overall by a very wide margin. But perhaps the biggest reason for Ethereum's underperformance is that it lacks a clear narrative for new investors to understand. For instance, Bitcoin's narrative is pretty simple. It's digital gold, and this has helped the US spot Bitcoin ETFs gain so much traction, and it's why many people and institutions, including the US government, plan to hold BTC in their portfolios. Conversely, Ethereum's is tougher to grasp. It's the global virtual computer powering DeFi and smart contract applications. Not as catchy as digital gold. However, what many people seem to forget is that Ethereum remains a market leader for a very good reason. Not only does it have the most robust smart contracts in all of crypto, but it's also the most decentralized and secure layer 1 outside of Bitcoin. And more importantly, it's the most decentralized smart contract cryptocurrency on the market. And this gives Ethereum massive potential for a number of things, especially tokenized real-world assets or RWAs. And this is where the recently launched Etherealize comes in. It could put 2 and 2 together and unlock Ethereum's institutional adoption. So, what exactly is Etherealize, and why is it causing such a buzz? Before we get onto that, though, have you heard of the Coin Bureau deals page? No? Well, over here, you'll get up to $100,000 of sign-up bonuses on the best crypto exchanges in the world, as well as up to 75% trading fee discounts for life. You can check that out in the link down below. So, what is Etherealize? Well, in short, Etherealize is a new institutional marketing and development firm backed by the Ethereum Foundation and Ethereum's creator, Vitalik Buterin. Etherealize launched in January this year with a clear mission: to drive institutional adoption of Ethereum by making it the go-to blockchain for tokenizing real-world assets or RWAs. It does this by offering a range of institutional-grade products that facilitate this tokenization of RWAs. Suspicious timing of that launch, though, just days after pro-crypto President Trump took office. Probably nothing. Anywho, the team behind Etherealize is a big part of its potential success. Its co-founder and CEO, Vivek Raman, spent a decade on Wall Street, so he knows a thing or two about how the suits think and what it will take to get them on board. Vivek is joined by other co-founders, Grant Hammer, formerly of Chromatic Capital, and James Fickle, one of Ethereum's earliest investors. Together, they've assembled a team of TradFi veterans and Ethereum experts that have what it takes to bridge the two worlds. In an interview with Laura Shin on the Unchained podcast, Vivek explained that after leaving Wall Street in 2019, he happened to bump into a few key Ethereum Foundation members the following year. They taught him all about Ethereum, and needless to say, Vivek was hooked. He knew that he could be instrumental in bridging TradFi and DeFi, and he was right. Etherealize tweeted that within 24 hours of launching, quote, "The response from Ethereum and TradFi ecosystems has been nothing short of incredible. Players from the Ethereum app layer, the infra layers, the L2s, and from all parts of Wall Street reached out and want to help." Vivek also confirmed in that Unchained episode that Wall Street has known about smart contract blockchains for years, and that most banks are running clones of Ethereum behind the scenes. And these clones are essentially private EVM-compatible chains that are exclusively available to institutional investors. The reason these institutions use private chains? Well, privacy, of course. Put simply, institutions can't sustainably benefit if they disrupt the market every time they make a move. Logically then, the next step is moving from private to public blockchains, and Etherealize believes that Ethereum's Layer 2 solutions, especially those with zero-knowledge proofs, will give institutions the privacy and scalability they need to make that jump. And this is why part of Ethereum's offering includes ZK-proof privacy to institutions. And speaking of Layer 2s, Vivek explained in that Unchained episode that because institutions are interested in maximizing profits, L2s would be the ideal choice. And that's because running an L2 would provide them with extra revenue from the fees, which also accrues value back to Ethereum. Vivek also explained that Ethereum and its Layer 2s would work to complement banks rather than replace them. Basically, everyone working at the bank gets to keep their jobs, but everything becomes much more efficient behind the scenes. And what's not to love about that? In any case, Etherealize is positioning itself as the ultimate bridge, the missing piece that finally unlocks Ethereum's institutional future. Now, you may be wondering why Etherealize is pitching Ethereum as the perfect solution for tokenized RWAs. After all, there are plenty of other options out there for institutions to explore. Heck, some blockchains like Ondo Finance are specifically built with institutional RWAs in mind. And you can learn more about Ondo Finance by checking out our recent video on that right over here. Anyway, there are a number of reasons why Ethereum is the ideal choice. For one, Ethereum was the first blockchain to introduce smart contracts, which are essential for tokenization. The first mover advantage means it's the most battle-tested and has also created a network effect that's drawn in many users and developers who continue to innovate. And since Ethereum is now a proof-of-stake blockchain, this means that security is maintained without the use of massive amounts of energy, which would be a bad look for institutions that still prioritize ESG factors in their decision-making. Ethereum also supports the lion's share of the DeFi ecosystem, with the majority of stablecoins being on Ethereum. And this provides unparalleled liquidity for tokenized assets, and allows RWAs to be easily integrated into protocols for borrowing, lending, and even staking, providing additional earning opportunities for investors. Not only that, but Ethereum also has a diverse range of token standards that allow for assets to be standardized in different ways. For instance, there's ERC20, which is the standard for most Ethereum-based tokens. There's also ERC721, which is the token standard for NFTs, which is actually more relevant than you might think. And that's because the concepts for NFTs and RWAs go hand in hand, since both essentially provide digital proof of ownership of a particular asset. But the token standard that really stands out is ERC 3643, which is specifically designed for tokenized RWAs. This token standard ensures compliance by integrating ID verification measures like KYC and AML directly. Only approved addresses can hold or transfer these tokens too, which makes them ideal for legal and institutional use. There are also a few upcoming updates to Ethereum that will make the blockchain much more appealing, specifically the Pectra upgrade that aims to enhance the network's scalability, security, and user experience. Pectra will improve Ethereum's security even further and will introduce account abstraction, allowing users to pay gas fees with various tokens. It will also increase the maximum validator stake from 32 ETH to 2048 ETH, which massively improves staking efficiency. This means that institutions won't need to spin up thousands of validator nodes to earn a yield on their ETH. And you can learn more about Pectra and the Fusaka upgrade that will follow it by checking out the video right over here. In any case, this means that Ethereum is well positioned to be the market leader for institutional adoption, and Etherealize aims to make this dream a reality. And given that a whopping 86% of on-chain RWAs are already on Ethereum, there's no question that this will be one of the most bullish catalysts in Ethereum's history. Now then, Etherealize's focus on RWAs begs the question of just how much potential this particular narrative has. Well, in case it wasn't already obvious, the answer is lots. In fact, the RWA sector is expected to reach anywhere between $4 trillion and $30 trillion by 2030. That's an insane amount by anyone's standard, and that's just for one sector. And that's because tokenizing RWAs means much more than simply sticking something on-chain for the sake of calling it a crypto asset. Instead, tokenized RWAs have the power to completely reshape the traditional asset landscape. And what's more is that this is something that asset managers like BlackRock are actively pushing for. You see, there's a whole range of traditional assets that could benefit from blockchain integration. Among others, these include things like stocks, bonds, real estate, fine art, and collectibles, commodities like gold or oil, and even intellectual property. By tokenizing them on-chain, these normally illiquid assets suddenly become much more accessible and much more liquid. And that's because not only does crypto trade 24/7, but smart contract functionality also allows for things like fractional ownership. So, for example, tokenizing real estate could allow investors to own fractions of a building, which removes the need for large upfront capital and improves its accessibility and liquidity. Tokenized assets also benefit from enhanced security and transparency, and investors in these assets can enjoy much faster settlement times and transaction speeds. As we mentioned earlier, integrating real-world assets with smart contract functionality allows tokenized RWAs to become programmable. This, in turn, allows for automatic regulatory compliance, since KYC and AML requirements can be baked into the protocol. And as if it wasn't already cool enough, institutions can even earn a yield on these assets by locking them into DeFi protocols. Now, the potential that RWAs provide is something that asset managers like BlackRock are hyper aware of, which is why it has been leaning into this emerging niche. In fact, BlackRock has been going all in on crypto, which is crazy when you consider that it's the largest asset manager in the world. Not only did BlackRock push the SEC hard for spot Bitcoin ETFs to be approved, but BlackRock's iShares ETF is the largest Bitcoin ETF out there. And not only that, but BlackRock also created the BUIDL fund on Ethereum. And BUIDL stands for BlackRock's USD Institutional Digital Liquidity, for anyone wondering. The thing is, BlackRock isn't the only institution exploring crypto. For example, JP Morgan launched its own private blockchain called Onyx, which has since rebranded to Connexus. The megabank also has its own private dollar-pegged stablecoin for institutional investors called JPM Coin. Elsewhere, Franklin Templeton has its own on-chain US government money market fund called FOBOX, which provides investors with access to government securities. Franklin Templeton is also a node operator for multiple blockchains, including Ethereum, Polkadot, Cardano, and Solana, among others. Even the CEO of Bank of America, Brian Moynihan, has said that the bank is eager to explore tokenized real-world assets if regulations improve, which, given how pro-crypto the current US administration is incredibly likely. And not only that, but the bank holds over 80 blockchain-related patents. Now, with all that in mind, it's easy to see how Etherealize can educate other institutions and onboard them into Ethereum. All Vivek and co. need to do is point to these institutions as industry leaders who have adopted blockchain technology, and they'll quickly see there's a clear market demand. Of course, as this regulatory backdrop becomes less hostile and more embracing, the easier this pitch will be. And once these institutions feel the inevitable FOMO, Etherealize will be there to provide a suite of products and services to help them create blockchain products of their own, whether it's their own tokenized assets or even their own Layer 2 blockchains. Now then, all of this leads us to the big question. If Etherealize is successful in getting institutions to adopt Ethereum for tokenized RWAs, what would this mean for Ethereum and ETH's price? Well, the first thing that would happen is Ethereum would see a massive surge in network usage. As more institutions begin to adopt Ethereum to tokenize and trade RWAs, this would result in much higher transaction volumes and more ETH being burned as a result. It could even push ETH back to being a deflationary asset, which would be seriously bullish. This adoption would also add further legitimacy to the Ethereum ecosystem and would be a turning point for sentiment, which, we don't need to remind you, is at rock bottom right now. As this starts to improve, it would attract more users, developers, and projects to the ecosystem. This would have the knock-on effect of creating more possibilities for innovation, pushing Ethereum even further ahead of the pack. As for ETH's price, it's pretty self-explanatory. The massive increase in demand for RWAs on Ethereum would also mean a massive increase in demand for ETH, both for transaction fees and for use in DeFi protocols. Never mind the revival in ETH speculation. Obviously, this would be a huge boon for ETH's price, which at the time of shooting is clearly lacking a key demand driver. The thing is, the chart doesn't always tell the full story. If you watched our recent summary of Coinbase and Glassnode's report, you'll know that multiple data points suggest that ETH is like a coiled spring right now. For instance, the spot Ethereum ETFs saw a massive spike in AUM in Q4, ending the year with more inflows than outflows. And this suggests that institutions are becoming more excited about Ethereum since Trump's election victory. And there are also record levels of ETH being staked, and there's growing total value of ETH being locked in DeFi protocols. And you can find out more about all of that in this video right over here. Now, it's pretty clear that Etherealize will be a key driver for Ethereum's success. Sure, things are rough right now, but in our view, Etherealize could change this, and ETH could be about to recover as a result. Here's hoping, of course. Okay, folks, if you enjoyed this video, then check out our latest one right over here. And if you're not subscribed to the channel yet, you can do that right over here. That's me for now. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon.